Okay, this is a quick overview, kind of a quick how-to on converting B44 into the sct44. With the kit, what we put together is the lower chassis, all countersunk. This is the actual chassis, the final production, and the front shock tower to allow you to run the truck, the SC10 front shocks, and to allow for the factory placement of the SC10 front body posts. The front bumper, it actually bolts through the back of the shock tower, and you just take those little standoffs that are on the front shock brace, or the front bumper brace, and you just trim those off flush, and those bolts will go right through. You'll have to mark a hole and drill it. Underneath, just like an SC10, just find those two holes, good to go. As far as arms on mine, I'm running the B4 arms. Gives you a little bit extra wheelbase to meet ROAR rules, and they're a little tougher than the B44 is what I found. If you run the B4 arms, I don't know if you can see, I've got a couple spacers to basically make the center of the bulkhead a little wider, and I drilled a hole with the set screw because there is no set screw on the back of the B4 arms. Of course, there's the regular B44 set screw right there. The front axles are the rear B44 axles. You just made them up to the stock front dog bone. So you'll take the rear stub axle and made it up to the front dog bone. I took a T4, the rear crush tube, that aluminum tube right in there, and I just trimmed it down to where it would accept the width of the blue cone washer to where the drive pin would still go in and still work properly. There's an actual, on the other truck that I put together, I found a crush tube that just happened to be the exact same size that I needed. I'm not exactly sure what that part number was. I don't know what that came off of. I'm still looking for that. Once I find it, I'll make sure that we put it on there. It was perfect. As for the front body mounts, there'll be 2 holes in the top, well, 3 holes total. I didn't put a screw in there. And you just run 440 screws with 440 nuts on the back, right through the top. And of course, you're using the SC10 front shocks, and you want to use some long bolts. So as you can see, that bolt goes all the way through the front of the arm and into the regular mounting location, because on the buggy the shock actually goes down into that little gap. So you got to make up that difference with the length of the screw. On the back, pretty straightforward. I just took and trimmed the back bumper. See that little triangle? I actually cut it right there and just re-drilled me a hole, and it runs right through the brace of the rear shock tower, and I lobbed off a little extra on the body mount just to keep it from rubbing on the shock tower. Then I ran longer 440 screws through right here, and that ties into the rear bumper. And underneath, what I did is I just trimmed the 2 holes off. If you look at, this is just a stock SC10 rear motor guard. Acts as an extra shock absorber rather than just letting it flop around out there by itself. But I just trimmed the 2 holes off the side, and then just re-drilled 1 hole in the middle, and it runs through. On the stock B44, there's a little kick plate. It's kind of like a little bumper, but there's a little screw in there, and I just 440 screw right into there. The main thing that makes this thing possible is the rear drive shaft, because if you notice, it's a front plate on the front and a front plate on the rear. It puts it at exactly the right wheelbase. It's a ROAR spec minimum wheelbase, and the width on the rear is like 1/10 under the maximum, and the front is just slightly over the minimum. Now, this is where the Traxxas and the low-C parts come in. This right here is the yoke, the Traxxas yoke. The part numbers are listed on our parts list that comes with the chassis. As you can see, there's a hole already through there, and it comes with the little Traxxas set pins. And if you notice, that hole is shaped exactly like the output shaft down here on the slipper out drive. What you have to do is, instead of using that hole, because it's in the wrong location, you have to drill right there, exactly the same spot, just completely perpendicular, so it runs through the slot long ways. And when you do that, it will allow that to slide over the diff out drive, or the slipper out drive, and that Traxxas set screw will then be able to line up with the hole on the slipper out drive. One thing you will have to do is you'll have to match the diameter on that hole to that Traxxas set screw. Don't remember off the top of my head what size that hole is. I just took the drill bits and matched the Traxxas set screw, and I just drilled that hole in that out drive just a hair bigger. I mean, it's just barely like a 32nd bigger, and it will accept that Traxxas set screw, and that ties it in. And as you can see, that low-C drive shaft, it just clicks into that yoke, like almost like it was made for it. This was actually a trackside fix when I broke my custom drive shaft, and turned out it worked really well, so we just kept it. And this is a low-C triple XT drive shaft. Like I said, part number will be on the parts list. I don't really have it right in front of me, but I took the set screws and I went ahead and put some set screws in the factory holes on that yoke, just to kind of help keep it centered up. I didn't want it to wobble or anything, but I don't even really think it needs it. You can see that's the back side of that set screw, and actually that was the top. But anyways, that ties the rear end together, and of course on the back, I mean, it goes together just like your stock drive shaft. I mean, exactly. Those low-C drive shaft joints and the Traxxas joints, they're identical on those part numbers. And I do believe the rear end, it's just truck shocks, you know, T4 SC10, T4 SC10 arms and turnbuckles. And then on the rear, all it is the B44 knuckle. You could use the SC10 knuckle. I just happen to use this because they were already assembled. But one thing that I wasn't able to make work was CVs on the rear. You have to use the T4 SC10 dog bones and the stub axles. And the reason for that is, well, somebody else might be able to figure that out, but whenever you use the T4 CVs or the SC10 CVDs, whenever it comes to compress, it actually binds right before it breaks over. It was just a hair too long. I mean, you may be able to modify one to make it work. I just don't want to jeopardize the strength of it. Everything else on here, the chassis comes pre-drilled for saddle packs, but you can run a stick pack. You just take your speed controller, put it over here on the same side with your motor, and that opens up this whole side to a stick pack, either laying down or standing up. However you want to do it, you'll just have to drill your own holes. I run the saddle packs just because I had some, and it seems to make the balance really well on the truck. That way I don't have to worry about offsetting the balance of the battery on the other side. And that's pretty much it. And I'll put up a more detailed video of me actually modifying the parts, but we got a couple chassis going out today, and I know the guys are going to want to at least be able to see how everything goes together. And when we go to Bigfoot in Texas, you know, I want to be able to give the guys a link so they can look at it. But the only parts that aren't associated are the drive shaft and that Traxxas yoke, which are low-C and Traxxas. Other than that, everything else is the same. I mean, all the drive line, steering, the whole front suspension pretty much stays the same except for changing the arms and the shocks. No need to adjust the linkages because that's a B44 front knuckle. That's the B44 caster block. It's all exactly the same as a B44. No change there. Steering rack's all the same. I actually moved mine from this hole to this hole, It seems like it doesn't go over and lock as much, but I never ran a B44 before this, so that may be just a common thing, I'm not sure. But that's pretty much it, and like I said, the chassis will be all countersunk, well, except for those two holes in the middle because I have a funky lipo saddle. But for the regular stock B44, you know, one you get from Associated, it just has those 4 screws that hold it in. It's all one piece. Otherwise, you'll just have to drill those little center holes. Mine was 3 pieces, and I haven't seen one like that before. As you can see, it goes right into the chassis. This one's a little thick. We wanted to go for durability. 4-wheel drive four-wheel drive short course class is kind of notoriously rough at our track, so we just went for durability, and it seems to be doing fine at our track. It set quite a few new records, so it's been doing pretty good. I'll post up another video soon of, you know, maybe a closer inspection of the drive shaft and the rear bumper off compared to a stock rear bumper, so you can actually see what I cut off, and probably the front too. But other than that, everything's pretty straightforward. The only modifications is the front and rear bumpers for the most part. But that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye.